This is Kuldrin's Krypt, Season 1, Episode 20, for June 19th, 2017.
Welcome. Welcome to my dungeon.
Welcome to Kuldrin's Krypt. I'm your host, Master Kuldrin. If you're new to the show, this is a place to dispel myths, get rid of stereotypes, and answer your questions about BDSM. You can call in at 865-268-4005 to leave your questions, or visit the Krypt at kuldrinskrypt.com. This is a special episode of the Krypt, as it is our 20th episode in podcasting. That is a major milestone to hit. Also, this is Funsize's birthday episode. So Funsize, happy birthday. And with that, I'm going to turn the reins of Kuldrin's Krypt over to her, and she is going to interrogate me about what it is to be a professional dom. What it is, how you get into it, what are some of the legal issues that you'll run into, and of course, some of my own personal stories. Without further ado, here is Funsize.
On this episode, we're actually going to have a little bit of fun in which I get to interrogate and interview Master Kuldrin about professional doms.
And now those rules to love by. Rule number 1, safe, sane, consensual, and informed. Rule number 2, Kinky, K-N-K-I, from the Kinky app available on all platforms. That stands for knowledge, no intolerance, kindness, and integrity. And the quote from Mr. Paul Young, submission is not about authority and it's not about obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect.
How are you doing today, Master Kuldrin?
I am great. I'm excited to be talking about this. And also, I would like to say happy birthday to you when this comes out. This will be your birthday episode.
Yes,
Yay.
and it's a wonderful gift to me for you to do this, so thank you.
You're quite welcome. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to this particular topic.
Well, before we get into this, we're going to have 10 licks brought to us today by our wonderful sponsors at BDSMcontracts.org.
Hey, Master Kuldrin here. If you're having trouble putting together a contract for your DS or MS relationship, or if you just want something nicer, say in soft or hardbound, check out BDSMcontracts.org. I've used them in the past, and I will continue to use them in the future. Use the coupon code Kuldrin20 for a 20% discount off of all purchases. That's BDSMcontracts.org.
Whenever you're ready.
I am well prepared.
All right. So I think a lot of our listeners are very curious about this one. How long have you been into kink and the lifestyle exactly?
22 years. I started when I was 18 and I am now 40.
Oh, that is beautiful. I really look forward to hitting that stage. I think we all know the answer to this one, but top, bottom, or switch?
Top. I do have one aspect where I will bottom. I have a very specific masochistic need that includes belting across my upper back, shoulder blades, and I only satisfy that need once every few years, but that's about the extent of my bottoming.
All right. What is your relationship status right now?
Right now, married to a very lovely and supportive woman and searching for my next slave.
All right. And then I do remember you being rather eager to ask me this when we did my interview. What is your favorite position?
I have 3. If you just want plain primal, the gutter answer for that, doggy style.
I think we'd like to hear all 3.
As Master Arcane said in his interview, position 1 from the Crow Academy style, that is also an absolute favorite because it is the highest level of respect when my slave or submissive is before me on her knees and showing me respect by kissing my boot, raising, and then waiting for further instruction. And the third is the St. Andrew's Cross. Someone shackled to it and feeling the vicious bite of my flogger or riding crop, or my hands, my other favorite implement being my hands.
Well, since you jumped right into my next question of favorite implement, would it be your hands or would it be something else?
Yes, it would be my hands. I'm very old school in my love of the flogger, but to be able to feel the impact skin to skin provides me with such a level of, it just touches every sensation, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love that feeling.
And I've been told many times that I have magic hands, so that certainly plays into it as well.
I'm getting all sorts of mental pictures, and to keep things PG-13, no, they are not rated M or X. They are actually cloaks and magic wands.
Oh.
Somehow a top hat thrown in when you say magic hands, but that could just be me. I'm sure our listeners will go someplace else with that.
Or if you take it to the 1800s and that style of dress with the top hats and cloaks, you could add a vampire touch to it.
Which I happen to know you have a great fondness for.
I do.
What is your favorite role play?
Abduction.
Right. I'm sorry for our listeners that don't know. Master Kuldrin has actually told me some very interesting stories from his experiences off mic about abduction, but we're not going to get into that today because that's a bit off topic. What is your favorite place for kink?
I don't actually have a favorite place because I love it when it's just spontaneous. So any place where it occurs is my favorite place in that moment. And I know that may sound greedy, but that's just the way it is.
I don't think it's greedy. I think it's more organic. To any situation. What is your favorite fetish?
Vampire. Absolutely. Vampire fetish.
Somehow I knew that was coming. Strangest place you have had sex?
On the roof of a Checkers drive-through restaurant in Calhoun, Georgia, about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. I remember it well.
Well, clearly, I'm very curious as to how you managed to get up there for those activities.
There was a milk crate and a sitting out back and a ladder that was attached to the building. My girlfriend just kind of looked at me, looked over at the building. We very often shared the same thought. So we parked the car, ran up, jumped on the milk crate, kind of had to jump up to hit the ladder, pulled ourselves up, and yeah, there it was. We spent about an hour and a half up there.
Well, that is impressive. All right, and our final lick of the day. What is something that you are wanting to try?
Oh, wow. That is a hard question. It's not necessarily all that kinky or BDSM related, but sex on a motorcycle down the highway at about 130. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so that would just be an awesome experience.
Well, I hope you're smart enough to keep your helmet on, because that sounds like it will take a great deal of skill.
Yeah, something I want to try, but not something that I necessarily would try.
I should hope not. I definitely want you around for a very long time.
Well, thank you.
All right. So today we're discussing professional DOMs, and it is something that I have tons of curiosities about, as you know, and it's something that you have experience in that I just don't. So on to my fun little birthday interrogation of you.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not 10 licks. This is going to be like 100 licks.
I don't have quite 100 questions for you. There's quite a few, but there's not 100. So
well,
I'll try to keep the intensity down.
I will say I have given complete consent to whatever you come up with. So I think I'm prepared, but you're very creative. So you might stump me with something. We'll see.
I hope I don't stump you too badly, but at the same time, I do hope that we're able to create an information flow for myself and for our listeners on this topic, because I feel like this is something that a lot of people have questions about and don't quite know about if they haven't come across a professional dominant or a professional dungeon in their lives. So why don't we start out with you telling us exactly what a professional dominant is?
A professional dominant is just someone who makes a career, whether it be part-time or full-time, out of making clients for BDSM needs. They are paid, and it is absolutely not prostitution. In fact, as a professional dominant, sex or sexual acts is not an option for most people.
That makes sense, because prostitution is still illegal in a lot of places. How is that different than other careers in the sex industry? How does it compare in feeling to porn stars or prostitutions where escort service is legal? Is it just because of the BDSM involved, or is it strictly the lack of actual sexual contact?
Well, see, that is where the mistake is made, is that it is compared both legally and societally to being in the sex industry. And it's really not. It would be, in my experience, it's more closer related to the psych field than it is to the sex industry. But as with everything in BDSM, there seems to be such a negative connotation with it and just a misunderstanding in the community, in our society, that automatically places it there because it's considered abnormal, taboo. But yes, money does change hands in my case, and most of the professionals that I know, there are no sexual acts involved. I think I answered your question.
You did, but it led me to another question.
Okay.
And this question would be that you said it's closely related to the psych field of careers.
Yes.
But psychiatrists and psychologists are all professionally trained, and they have to go through licensing progress.
Correct.
And processes in pretty much every state in America, and I'm fairly certain in other countries as well. So how would you say that affects being a professional dominant when you don't have to have training in this field?
I think it can make it very dangerous in a lot of cases. But I will also say that a lot of the people that I know personally have taken it upon themselves to receive education and training, or they're almost empathic to other people's, emotions, and can sense when things are beyond their level, and they will either refuse a client, tell a client that they must also seek professional counseling or therapy before they will have sessions with them, or they'll just refuse them altogether. Now, myself, as you and the listeners know, I have spent 20 years in the psych field. I've undergone massive amounts of training through several different higher learning institutions, and that is one of the big draws for me that brought me into it. Is, okay, there's not a lot of people out there who are BDSM friendly. At least 20 years ago, there wasn't, and it was hard to find them. Now, thankfully, to the internet and certain websites, it's pretty easy. No matter what you're looking for, you can find someone who is a professional in that field and is BDSM friendly. But like I said, when I got started, that was not the case. So in honing my skills and talents in the BDSM world and in the psych field, they just seem to merge together.
Okay. I'm not sure how I would feel about that from a submissive standpoint with certain professional dominance, but I think that's where it's important for submissives to vet professional dominance and professional dungeons. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You know my stance on the vetting process anyway.
Yes.
For your personal safety, you have to. I don't care what you're doing. And that rolls over into my vanilla life as well, even with friends. Making new friends, making new business associates. I don't just jump in without research. It's just not going to happen. That is absolutely, for one's personal safety, the most important single thing that you can do, no matter what your mental state is going into it. Whether you're doing it just for pure fun or because you have this deeper reason for it. And I've said several times, in fact, in your interview, I believe it was, I talked to you about using BDSM as therapy, and I still do not recommend that. However, as a professional dom, it's unavoidable. You're going to see it, and you have to know how to deal with it. And there are training programs out there. There are mentorships under people that can have. They're very difficult to find, but they're out there. It's just, there again, doing your research, knowing what you're looking for, and making sure that you don't think that you know that you know, but also know that you're a human being, and that brings in certain flaws. So not being cocky about it or arrogant. To thine own self be true. It's that type of thing.
Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit. Can you explain what exactly is the line of legality that you have found in most places? I know it varies region by region. I happen to have sneaked a peek at one of your FetLife discussions on filling around for perhaps opening a professional dungeon in your area, and one of the notes there was that there was a legal issue with moral turpitude in your region.
Yes.
How does things like that affect the legality and how you handle being a professional dominant?
The moral turpitude law makes it impossible to open up a shop like that. To open up a professional dungeon, strip clubs, things of that nature. They just kind of throw it all in there together, and it prevents it from happening. So it has to be something done in private. And a lot of it is done in private anyway. There are several places, I believe at the Mark in Nashville. God, I can't remember the name of the place in Atlanta, but you can go to those clubs and meet with somebody, maybe not so much a professional, but someone who is a master at their craft for an experience, but it's not going to be so well catered and ongoing as it would be to have a professional dom.
What it sounds like you're describing with that is the difference between having a therapist you would see maybe every week or every other week in the case of a professional dominant that caters to you versus going to a psychologist that visits your work once a year kind of thing. Would you say that that's applicable?
Yeah. In fact, as a professional, I can only think of 2 out of several clients that I saw that were only one-time visits, not counting the ones that I refused to work with, but those weren't actual sessions. Those were just meet and greets.
All right. And before we move on to the vetting process for clients, I do have one more question for the legality. Moving aside from your particular region's laws,
Yes.
what would you say is the line of legality there as far as keeping professional domination separate from something like prostitution?
Sex is the line, but I can say that most people who practice it are going to become very well known amongst their local law enforcement because they tend to check in on you from time to time.
And I really want to go beyond our PG-13 rating, of course.
Certainly.
But this is something we have discussed before. We actually touched on it a little bit in our last podcast. But how would you say that legally sex is defined?
I used to know this verbatim for most of the country, but it is basically any genital contact with the implied intent of sexual release or sexuality. So anything, it's Bill Clinton and that whole Monica Lewinsky thing kind of changed it in our minds, but it certainly did not change it legally. It applies to oral sex, using of toys, anything that is going to be of that nature. Now that does not include CBT, which is genital torture, though I know some who will not perform that just because of the risk of someone considering that a sexual act.
All right. Of course, I would imagine that any form of penetration would be considered that.
Absolutely.
Even with toys or symbionts.
Yes.
Correct?
However, I do know a dominatrix that will use strap-on toys for making her sissy boys perform oral on that particular toy, and that is acceptable to most. That is something that even if you were under a raid at that moment, and it would probably stand up in court if you had a good attorney.
It sounds like there's a very fine line that professional dominants have to walk as far as the law is concerned in comparison to fulfilling the needs of their submissives. But how would you vet a client?
Well,
what is the process on that?
Before we get into that, first, it is a very fine line, but man, it's a lot of gray too. It's incredible how you have to dance around the legal system to perform a service that is very beneficial to most, but not even sexual in nature. But because people consider it a perversion, they automatically consider it pornography or prostitution or things of that nature. So that's a little soapbox that I have. And in my frustration with that, I have forgotten what the question was. So if you could hit me with that again.
I was asking what your vetting process for clients would be.
Since I saw people primarily in private spaces, it was all word of mouth, and it was simply just checking on them through the client that referred them to me, and also digging a little background and seeing what their professional life is, where they are, what they do for a living, things of that nature. That was one thing that I learned that was very, very interesting to me. I told them absolutely nothing about my personal life. Nothing. But yet they were very willing to share absolutely everything about theirs because of how much they wanted the services that I offered.
That certainly makes sense to me. How would you compare the vetting process for a client to just a regular submissive or slave for yourself?
There are a lot of similarities, like I said, in the research that you do and in talking to other people that they know. Most of my clients would know maybe 2 or 3 others that I saw as well. So I typically have multiple sources. Now, there's times where that was absolutely not the case, but usually it was. And I guess the differences is when you're vetting somebody through a munch, you can be very open about it, but when you're vetting someone who is a politician or a bank CEO or something like that, you have to tread very lightly because you don't want to out them. So, and they are typically not going to be showing up at munches because they do have a certain public notoriety, and there's just too much fear there that someone may overhear a conversation at the munch, even though munches are supposed to remain pretty much vanilla. As you are well aware, we do get into some kinky conversations from time to time, and they just can't be associated with that because of the implications that that could have on their careers or how society looks at us. It's very sad, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's part of the reason that discretion is such an important thing for anyone in the lifestyle. But getting back into our professional dominance conversation, because yes. I don't want to veer too far off topic. How does one become a professional dominant? As you know, I have a personal interest in this because it is something I have considered and have been considering doing for a while now. So how would I go about that?
Since you have a very large online presence, that could be where you start, and it depends. Do you want to do this online, which we haven't talked about, or do you want to do this in the real world? As far as online, going through Red Light Social, MView, or I believe you can do it through Second Life. You create an account, you pay I'm going to speak primarily on MView because that is what I'm familiar with, but you go in, you set up an account, you build your avatar, you pay your $20. It's a one-time fee to upgrade to the adult content, and then you basically build your rooms, build your dungeon however you want, and people will actually pay you to do online domination. And it is a very, very slow going process because there's a lot of people out there that think, oh, I'm kinky, I can just go do this and make tons of money. And it's very similar to podcasting in the way that there's 300,000 podcasts out there. 98% of them have very poor audio quality, or the people just haven't really studied their craft, don't really know what's going on, but yet they're putting out episode after episode in pro online dom or dominatrix setting. You know, you've got these people putting out their commercials through MView basically and advertising and going into chat rooms and things of this nature saying, hey, this is what I have. But so many of them just don't really have the skill for it because they're just there to make money. And it's something that you have to be passionate about. It cannot be about the money. Someone was asking me earlier today, someone that I know on Facebook, trying to quiz me about it. And we're talking to them later today. So I kind of steered away from the question, but it was, how hard is it to not connect with your clients to make sure that you maintain that emotional separation? And the answer to that is you don't. Not if you're good. Not if you're going to provide them with what they truly need, and not if you're going to enjoy doing it for a long amount of time. I have great respect and emotional connection to nearly every single person, whether it was professionally or personally, that I've ever seen with. And that's something that you cannot develop if it's just all about trying to make a living as a professional dom.
Kind of jumping back to the topic at hand, how would we go about it in real life? We've talked about how to set up things like InView and Second Life. How would one do that in real life? What would be the process there?
In real life, it is just putting yourself out there. There again, it is going to be a slower process. I don't think it's actually as slow in real life as it is online. I will tell you that the danger is much, much, much greater in real life, and that should be obvious, but to some, it really needs to be stated. It can be extremely dangerous, both legally and personally, but putting yourself out there, a lot of people will do it through FetLife, Craigslist. I have a great friend that lives in North Carolina that is a dominatrix. She's young, and when I first met her, I thought, oh, well, here we go. It's a 50 shader, just going to jump in here and try to do this, but no, she knows what she's doing, and she's been doing it for 2 or 3 years. But even at that, it took her, well, I guess the 3 years, and she's 23 years old, so she started when she was 20. But come to find out, she's been around kink since she was like 13 or 14. So she does have knowledge, and she really studies her craft. But she is just now to the point where she is a 100% professional dominatrix. That is all she does. That pays for her rent, power, and her car.
So talking about how to make money, I would say that you would probably need a loyal client base. How would you build that up? I mean, after you've been at it for a few years, you have 1 or 2 people. How would you expand on that and keep clients coming back?
The way to keep clients coming back is actually the easy part. The hard part, because if you're providing the service that they need, they will be back.
Right.
And the fact it can be quite difficult to find a professional dom that knows what they're doing. So once you establish that relationship with someone, chances are you're going to have them for as long as you want them. But to get them initially, and after 2 or 3 years, you've got, a couple of regular clients, it should build up a little bit faster than that. You should have a few, a dozen regular clients, and it really depends on what services you're offering and what your price point is and where you enter into the, I really hate to say it this way, but what level of society you enter into it as a pro. Meaning that if you're seeing average blue collar, middle class or lower middle class clients, or if you're jumping into it where you're at a high end level seeing some of the wealthy businessmen or women in your area. So there's a massive difference there. But to further that answer, so it's all just based on service and their needs, making sure that you're doing what you need to do. You're taking care of them properly. Because the scenes in the professional world are not that unlike your private life. There is aftercare. There's going to be check-ins. So, yeah, all of it.
Would you say that having a client base is perhaps similar to holding a harem, or would you call that a complete difference because you are essentially servicing the needs of multiple people at any given time? It may not be simultaneously, but it is multiple people that you have as submissive to you in one form or another.
No. Some may look at it that way. I didn't look at it that way at all because it was completely professional. And for me, a harem is going to be filled with a lot of love and sexual activity. It's going to be unbridled love. And with this, you have to keep your mindset completely professional, or you'll work yourself right out of a job.
Right. Speaking of jobs, when it comes to taxes, if this is something you're doing and all you do is professional domination in order to make your rent, your car payments, whatever you live off of, how would you handle taxes for that and listing yourself as a legal business? Would you, for legal purposes, list as unemployed? How would that be handled?
There's several different ways that you can manage that. You can do an LLC, single proprietor. I'll just say that there are several legal ways to do that. I am not a tax professional, so I don't want to really offer up too many things there. Just go down to H&R Block or talk to a legal professional. Find one of those tax professionals that are BDSM friendly and talk to them about it. There are several different ways to manage it. I can say that personally, you can just make the money and not file on it. Obviously, that is illegal, and I do not recommend it. I do know people that do that, or I know of them. I typically stay away from anyone that is offering illegal services. And if you're not paying taxes on it, then it is an illegal service. And if you're found out, then everybody around you is also going to come under investigation, basically. They're going to dig. They're going to find out who your friends are, who other professionals are. It doesn't matter if it's the same state or a different state. And it will put the magnifying glass on them. So I know it's something that you're interested in getting into, and I highly, highly recommend as you move along and build a client base and start making a significant amount of money that you definitely handle it the correct way by talking to a tax professional, a CPA, something of that nature, and figuring it out how you need to do it. And it varies from state to state as well. So I can't really testify too much on that. And that amount can vary from $1,000 to $10,000 or more. If it's just a hobby, you're being professional about it, but it's more of like, okay, I'm getting started. I'm going to test the waters. This is kind of a hobby type thing. Then these are gifts, and from any single person in my state, or I believe according to the federal tax law, you can receive up to $9,999.99. It cannot round up to $10,000. So it has to be 49 cents or less. But you can receive that as a gift from any single person. But if you're doing this as a job, the IRS is not going to look at it as, oh, you've got all these friends giving you these gifts once a week or once a month or once a quarter. No, they're going to look at it as this is a side business and you have not handled yourself correctly. It's time for debtor's jail.
So I would personally advise our listeners, to anyone that's thinking of doing this, to absolutely research your local laws, both for the legality and for the tax information, which is part of the legality.
I would actually advise most people just not to do this, period, because it's something that sounds fun and exciting, and it really is. But if you don't have a 100% absolute passion for it, it's just going to be a frustrating, bad experience. And you will set yourself up for failure. Not you personally, but in general, people will set themselves up for failure by thinking that it's going to be so much fun and it's going to be so easy. And it is work. It is a lot of hard work, especially in the beginning, getting yourself known with the right people. And that's the key, is the right people.
So what would you say makes a good professional dom? Because you're talking about people setting themselves up for failure, not to offend anyone, but the kind of fly-by-night attitude that some have out there just to make a quick buck. But what would constitute a good professional dom?
Same thing that makes a good dom. I keep saying a true passion, but it is who they are. And when something brings you pleasure in such a deep way, you are going to automatically research your role more, learn your skills, practice and practice and practice your skills. People often express concern about somebody that's an insta-dom that picks up a flogger, a riding crop, or a violet wand and just, I can do this. This is simple enough. Sure. But there are also those people that become overly eager, and they do start out really well. They practice and practice and practice, and then they just think, oh, well, okay, I've got this, and not really go to anyone, seek out a mentor and say, hey, this is what I've been doing. This is how I've been practicing. Do you mind letting me show you my technique and basically getting you to sign off on it and give me all the feedback that you can. The last Sunday, I was at a cookout. There was a young man in his mid-20s. He's a master rigger, and that is something that I am not in any way. I am not a master rigger. I am very much a beginner to novice when it comes to rope play, and I was talking to him about it, and for some reason, someone seemed surprised when I asked him about taking me on as a student, basically, and showing me the ropes, literally. And he was very willing and eager to do that. He wants to show people the right way because he's so passionate about rope play, and he's so caring about making sure that it's done correctly because it's very dangerous. And that goes right in line with being a professional. It is very rewarding, but it can also be very dangerous in real life setting for you and the bottom or the submissive.
Oh, absolutely. I happen to love rigging, as you know, and I can't stress the safety on it any more than possible because the safety for it is so essential to all parties. Trying to jump back on topic, I'm trying to steer us here a bit. I actually have a question on training to be a pro dom.
Okay.
It sounds like you definitely think that training is vital, and I personally agree. How would training to be a professional dom differ than, say, the dominant training that I received? Would they be similar? What are we looking at here for this?
Well, how broad range was your training?
Mine was fairly broad ranged in everything from handling the psychological and emotional side of things to rigging and implement use.
Okay.
And then I definitely got the aftercare drilled into me.
In that case, it wouldn't be that much different. You do have to have a wider range of play, and you also have to be very secure in being able to say no, especially when you have your clientele built and someone comes in wanting someone that, if you're true to yourself, you know you can't do it, shouldn't do it, or there definitely needs to be a rack system in place by saying, hey, you want this. This is my experience level, which is basically none or very little, and I'm very concerned about this. And in some cases, I have gone ahead with it. They've said, you know what? I am informed. I know the risk. I'm very aware, and I will consent to this kinky activity fully. And again, there have been times where I've gone ahead with it and other times where I have just said, you know what? No, I can't do this. This is not part of my expertise, and I'm just not comfortable with the safety of it.
Kind of staying on topic with that, how would you say that your own professional limits and interests affect your personal or your professionalism? How would that be affected? Would you say that something that you're just not interested in is something that you wouldn't do as a professional, or is it something that you would be willing to push aside as part of a scene?
To be honest, I'm pretty flexible when it comes to the professional side. There are a lot of things that I have done in the professional world that are not kinks of mine at all, but I played into it and I enjoyed it because they were getting out of it what they needed. But as far as that typical hitting dom space, when I'm doing something that is just for someone else that I'm being paid to do, that is not part of my regular repertoire, it is not going to bring me into dom space. An example of that would be, I like knife play. That's not to be confused with edge play. That is something totally different, a topic that we will talk about later. But in getting into that, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I do have my favorite little knives and things of that nature that I can play with, and I'm very comfortable with them. I have a lot of practice. I've practiced on myself a lot, so I know exactly depth and things of that nature. It's a very dangerous form of play, and I don't recommend it to people. It's one of the few things that I do that I don't consider part of being safe or sane, to be honest, but a client that wanted that to go to the next step. There's a big difference between using a scalpel and using a knife. And a lot of people just don't realize that. It is a massive, massive difference. You've got to have some really, really steady hands to get to that level. And
Yes.
that was one of those things where I'm looking at a client going, I understand that it is the look, the shine, the feel, the thinness of the scalpel, but that is something that I'm not that practiced with. And they said, look, I understand the risk. And then we negotiated different body parts that they were wanting that play on. Because I'll be honest, there was some body parts that I was not going to get close to, and others, and I'm not referring to genitals, like wrists, the crease in your legs there at your groin, things of that nature, places that can, you slip up, you go just a little bit too deep and you've nicked an artery and boom, then you're up on charges for murder.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what kind of contract you have with somebody. You kill somebody, you're up on murder charges. Jack Kevorkian, the doctor that was famous, I believe, in the 90s for assisting in suicides. He never actually pushed the button himself, but he hooked up the IV that his patients would come to push the little button to inject themselves. And that's illegal. So in a case like that, I did not enjoy it. And I did it. It did not bring me to dom space, but it was something that the client needed, and it did actually lead me into becoming a more skilled person. But looking back at that, I should not have done it. Even though everything worked out fine, it should have been something that I stayed away from. And I'm always willing to admit mistakes. Hopefully somebody else out there will learn from my mistake.
How is it working alone versus professional dungeons where you have the possibility of more than one dominant present?
Honestly, I cannot speak to that very well. My experiences in professional dungeons was before I became a professional dom. So it was all just for fun, things of that nature. Now I have checked into opening up a dungeon in my local area, which is what we were talking about earlier with the laws and what has prevented me currently from doing that. But whether you're a professional dom or not, when you walk into a dungeon club, eyes are on you. You've got the DMs, the dungeon monitors. They're there to watch and to keep things safe. It is an experience that I've wanted to have because I think it would be awesome to have another set of eyes seeing that side of my life. I can be kind of an exhibitionist in that way, but I would take it as a learning experience. Like afterwards, debriefing with another professional and saying, hey, okay, you saw it, feedback. Tell me, how can I become better at my craft? But that's me being my typical self. I'm always looking to learn more to better how I perform what I do. It is truly an art to me, and I will never stop learning as long as I'm physically and mentally able to.
Absolutely.
And
I'm right there with you.
I guess as I probably already broke this way down, but just to bring it back home, that's what makes a pro dom a good pro dom and will keep you in business, is you never stop learning. Your desire is, it's a thirst that just cannot be pacified.
I would say sated.
Yeah,
personally.
sated.
It's a thirst for me that's never sated. What would you say is the difference between fin domination, financial domination of a submissive, and pro domination?
It's actually the same thing. It's just different aspects as far as the way that the submissives or the bottoms are handled. A findom is just there to get the money. And that's not to say that they don't care. The good findoms, they are going to care deeply about their submissives, and they're going to go by a certain code of ethics. I know one very well. She started out as a PSO, or a phone sex operator, on Night Flirts. She is one of their top, if not the top earner there. And most of what she does is findom, and she's phenomenal. She will turn clients away. She has refunded, I believe it was $10,000 from somebody.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they really wanted to pay tribute, and they sent her like 10 grand, and she knew that that was going to bankrupt them, and she was not going to be responsible for that. So she immediately refunded that back. Some people, and these are the ones who are just, I don't want to be too derogatory, but miserable scum that will go ahead and accept that and bankrupt somebody. You have to make that a hard limit, because that isn't just a kink thing. That is real world. And a lot of these people, married, not married, some are doing it behind spouses' backs, things of this nature, and which was a hard limit for me. If someone was married, they had to have an open conversation with their spouse about what they were coming to me for.
I have to say, from a moral standpoint, that is something that I really agree with and support. You and I are both married, and not to get too much into our personal lives, but our spouses are aware of where we stand on things. I feel like that's a very healthy communication. And not to drop too many hints for upcoming shows to our listeners, but I happen to know you will be talking in depth with my husband in an interview of him in the coming months.
Yes, I'm eagerly awaiting that one because I want to find out, of course, a lot of details about him, but we're going to scrub for some dirt on you too.
Oh, that sounds quite enjoyable. So, going back to our pro-domination, what kind of services are offered to clients typically, and what would the cost for those services look like?
Really good question. Basically, anything that you would do in your personal kink life is offered. Everything from the typical flogging, the typical mental picture of a dominatrix standing over a man on all fours with a ball gag and a diaper on, in her patent leather corset and patent leather thigh-high boots with, a riding crop in her hand. These things are stereotypes for a reason. Now, there are some that want some very extreme things. There are some that want very mild things. They just want the psychological submission. They're not in any way interested in being a bottom. They just want to be a submissive. But most of it does come down to a lot of degradation, because with my personal clientele being higher end, you're getting into some very powerful businessmen and women. And yes, I saw both men and women in that. They're again, Psych 101. It's stereotypical in what they need. They have this very powerful life that they live, and they just need a complete break from it. They need to not have to think for just an hour or 2 or 3, 4 hours, however long the session is, and just be at the mercy of someone else instead of being responsible for making sure 10 employees or 10,000 employees are going to be able to afford their mortgage because of the decisions that they make for the business on a daily basis. It's a massive amount of responsibility that can drive a person crazy. So if they don't seek out some kind of release for that, they could end up going to the hospital that I used to work at for other psychological issues. And to get into price, oh my God, that varies wildly. And it depends if it's online, in real life, if you're taking the FinDom aspect to it. I can say that my range has gone anywhere from $50 an hour up to $1,000.
Wow, that's quite a range.
Yeah, and that did change as I progressed in my personal journey with my skill level and with the clients that I was seeing.
Speaking of your clients, how would you lay out your process of either accepting new clientele or turning them away?
Through the vetting process, we would meet a couple of times to determine whether or not it was going to be a good fit. And in that, that which was very much a business meeting of sorts, I'm showing up meeting someone dressed as a colleague, basically. If their day-to-day practice was suiting up and going to the office, then that's what I would do when I met them for lunch, whether it was male or female. And you want to match their look when you go out. That's very important. So it's not giving off any little hints to anybody. And just through the meeting of them, and then of course the vetting process, that's what would give me the final determination of whether or not I wanted to see them.
Okay, and how would a interested sub find a professional dom if they don't have necessarily a foot in the door with you?
Coming at it from that point of view, coming at it with my own personal experience and the fact that I was only word of mouth, and that started out in a very interesting manner, which we can get into here in a minute if you like. But there wouldn't be anyone to find me unless they knew someone that was already seeing me. Now, earlier I mentioned Craigslist. That's a very viable option. It can be a very dangerous option, but it is out there. FetLife, all the typical sites. If you go into MView or Second Life or Red Light social, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually take that, finding clients there, and move that into real life if that's your choice. If you have clients close to you, or if you're seeing some of the wealthier clients online that will fly to see you, and they will.
That's a pretty impressive statement of your services, which, knowing you as I do, does not honestly surprise me.
It was only one time each, I will say that. And the reason at the end of it, when I decided, I'm not really enjoying this anymore, I'm going to step away from it. Or I probably would have seen both of them twice a year. That was originally the plan with them. And they were greatly disappointed when I informed them that I was moving away from it for a while. I will more than likely get back into it. I just needed a break. I have so many other things going on, and my primary focus is educating others because I was so tired of seeing all these stories of abuse. I just couldn't take it anymore. It's like, you know what? I have got to focus my energy. Somebody has got to come out with something that is not, and I know there's others out there and I commend them for it, but there's all kinds of kinky and smutty podcasts out there or avenues out there, and none of them were really saying the things that I wanted to say. So, and it shows. I mean, we've got a pretty large listener base now, so it just really shows me that we're doing the right thing. And with all the messages that I get on FetLife, it's amazing. It just charges me up so much every time I get one of these messages saying this happened to me, and I remembered what you had said. The most listened to episode, other than the first one, the intro, which I've thought about pulling it down just because of how new I was to the whole podcasting thing and how bad it sounds to me. But the most listened to is the one on what is a dominant, what is a submissive. Those are the two top ones. And then the others are the 3-part series on fake doms and red flags and predators. That series is the one that actually brings me the most messages or emails. I know I went off topic there, but I really want to take a minute to just thank the listeners for the feedback and for getting in touch with me. If you're taking time out of your day, that means that I've really either helped you in some way or really ticked you off in some way. So either way, I'm very grateful for the feedback.
And I actually want to thank you because I was a listener, and that's initially how you and I met, is that I had been listening to your series and I contacted you through FetLife.
And I'm so thankful that you did. You add so much information that I don't have, and you're just an amazing person.
But the reason why I was so excited to do first our initial interview together and then join you as a co-host is because you steer away from the smutty end of things. You bring to our listeners and to me personally every week that we do these a new level of learning, and it's something that we both feel very passionate about is learning and teaching others and creating a community of safety and communication and open, honest reactions to the lifestyle that we're living. So I personally want to thank you. And it has been such an amazing birthday episode for me to do this with you, to interrogate you on this topic that, as we've spoken off mic about several times, is something that I have considered getting into and really knew almost nothing about. So thank you for the interrogation and for the podcast every single week.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
You are such an amazing person to work with. So thank you, Master Kuldrin.
Oh, very, very welcome. And thank you for joining, as always. Do you have anything else for me?
I actually did have a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
No, fire at will.
So my biggest question is about the safety of submissives. What could an interested submissive do to ensure their safest possible experience as far as going to a professional dominant or a professional dungeon?
Well, I have to say that there are no guarantees. The vetting process is over and over is the most important part for the safety. But as far as actually guaranteeing your safety, unfortunately, that can't be done. I mean, just in the fact that I'm human, I could make a mistake, and so could anyone else, obviously. But the general rule there is trying to make sure that you vet them properly. I had clients, some of my earliest clients, that were more than willing to take phone calls from people or emails asking them about my style and their safety, things of this nature. So typically, after you're established for a little while, that won't be a problem as far as helping people to vet you. But even at that, especially with an email address or something of that nature, it's kind of like you said with doing your safety call. You can't trust typed words because you're not hearing the different person. I mean, I could set up 6 billion email addresses under different names and say, okay, here is my list of people that you can contact to vet me. And you email one of these people off this list. Well, it's me. I'm responding and I'm saying, oh, I'm this wonderful, fabulous person. And then, of course, trying to make it sound more real, I may go ahead and throw something in there that's, a little, well, I did have this one issue, but it was just a simple mistake. It only happened one time. And, there was one time when I saw him when he just really wasn't focused and ended up wrapping me a couple of times with a flogger. And I had a couple of marks around my neck. It was just really painful, but I had seen him so many times before that I knew it was just an off day for him. So, nothing to worry about there. And in fact, he has canceled an appointment with me once because he emailed me and said that he wasn't, feeling it that day and didn't want to do that again. I mean, you can be such a silver-tongued devil, but now you get somebody on the phone and you're going to know the voice most of the time. So make sure that there's somebody experienced that you can talk to. Any professional dom that has been doing it for any amount of time will more than likely, even in the early day, I had one person. Now, one's not enough, in my opinion, but that is a start. I had one person that somebody could call. And I actually talked to some of my former submissives and asked them, hey, I'm going to start doing this professionally. I kind of fell into this completely at random. And would you mind if I gave people your phone number or set up a Google Voice number for you so that they don't have your personal identity? Of course, now there's all kinds of different apps, WhatsApp, stuff like that they can use. But yeah, you really need to be able to talk to somebody to get those references.
What other safety advice would you offer to the professional dominants starting out that intend to do this real life?
The dominant's primary mode of safety is education, not just in your craft, but in your local laws, federal laws. That will save you so much hassle. Also, having an attorney as a friend is an amazing thing because you never know. There is always that thought in the back of your mind that, okay, this is going to be the moment. You might be doing something that is questionable, which for me personally, if it was something that was questionable as to sexual nature being confused there, I stayed away from it completely. But others have been rated as sex traffickers, and it was simply the position that caught them fines and a charge, which it was a lesser charge. It was dropped to a misdemeanor instead of the standard felony now that prostitution carries. Nowadays, as a John or someone who is receiving the services of a prostitute, it's federal law that you are now, I believe the term is aiding and abetting or sex trafficking.
Yes.
That's changed. It used to be they just let the Johns go. They'd arrest the prostitutes, the sex workers. But now, no, you're getting hit with a felony charge and you may get it dropped down. You may beat it. But man, is that ever going to look bad on the job? So just really making sure that you're in a safe setting as the professional and that you've got your ducks in a row. Some people, and this is only by consent of the client, but some people will record the sessions just in case they go to court. Some people will go as far to use an air-gapped computer, which is a computer that has never been hooked up to the internet.
Yes.
But most clients are not going to consent to that. Now, some clients will record it themselves and keep it.
As an FYI to our listeners, in order to record anything, you do have to have the other person's knowledge and consent of the recording. Otherwise, you are doing something illegal as an invasion of their privacy.
Yep. And that is a very good point to make. But for me, it goes so much. It's just unethical. It's just unethical. You don't record somebody without their knowledge and permission. And permission, there's the key word. That's just,
yes.
And I say that with such bitterness because that has happened to me. I have no shame. And if they would have asked me, I would have consented to it. But because they didn't, it was a violation. So, it's not something that I focus on or think of nowadays, but it did happen.
I would just like to also point out from the moral perspective of that these types of scenes, whether they're professional or just private, they are very private moments that people are experiencing. Even if you're an exhibitionist, you consented to this behavior to let others see, but it is very personal So as a moral standpoint, I cannot get behind anyone that exploits that without full consent and knowledge.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think we have a lot of information on professional domination, and I think we did a very good interrogation session for us. Kind of as a closing bonus for our listeners, why don't you go ahead and tell us that story of how you got started?
Sicily, 1906. No. Oh, some of the older listeners will absolutely get that. Others will be like, what did he say? I tell you what, anybody that goes onto the Facebook page, makes a post that says, I got it, and tells me where it comes from, send me your address and I will send you a Kuldrins Krypt exclusive sticker. You got to be in US, Canada, or Mexico to receive that. But yeah, I'll do that. So anyway, how I got started, in all seriousness, when I was 18, I took a dare to work in a strip club. I would do just about anything. So I went to work for a few weeks in a strip club and met someone in there, a woman. It was a club in Atlanta. It had both male and female dancers, and those bachelorette parties got crazy. Women are just nasty at those things. Let me tell you, I had to perform in 2 weeks. I performed for 4 bachelorette parties. It was insane. So anyway, at one of those, I met a woman that was believe the mother of the maid of honor, and she was a very well-to-do lady in Atlanta and invited me to get to know her a little bit better. She was a very attractive woman. I had no problem with this, and come to find out, she was hooked up with the kink community. Now, I was brand new to it. I had just met Makita, and so in her connection to the kink community, she was also connected to basically a network of very wealthy individuals that wanted private films made, and they wanted to direct them. So I actually got into making very, very private, top-end select adult films for people. And through that, someone witnessed my skill. Now, most of these were of the BDSM nature, and someone, I guess, saw my performance and contacted her because these were very private, but still kind of shared amongst the group. Just about everybody knew everybody. It was kind of incestuous, to be honest. But, people will typically run in the same circles of their level of society. So anyway, and I don't mean that derogatory, it's just a social fact. So anyway, someone offered me a certain amount of money for me to dominate them, and that's how it all began. I started in that circle. I lucked into it, really. It was a very lucrative business for a while, and then I moved to Tennessee and I got out of it, and one of the people that I knew from Atlanta took a job as the president of a company here and contacted me. And this was just a few years ago because I'd kind of gotten out of public with everything. And by that, I mean, I was not participating in anything FetLife, any munches, anything of that nature. I just needed a break from it. Anyway, this person called me and said, hey, I'm living in Knoxville now. Would you consider seeing me again? And also, there are a few others that I have a feeling they would probably like to see you as well. And reluctantly, I agreed to meet with them. So we went to dinner a couple of times and really talked about it, because it was probably a 4-month period, these 2 dinners. It took me a lot of thought and a lot of convincing really to get back into it, because there again, the whole passion thing was not exactly there. But when I saw their need and they brought up a very specific moment in one of the scenes that we had done together, it just ignited that fire again. It was that second dinner, and man, when they said what they said to me and reminded me of it, it wasn't even igniting a fire. It was just like turning me into a human fireball for it again. And so I went back onto that journey and spent quite a few years with that. I've been away from it for about a year. I got back into an adult film situation last year, and no, I won't tell anybody where they can find those. Those are private, mostly. Especially you, Funsize, because I know that you really want to know what's up with that.
I was about to inform our listeners that you mean very, very private with that. I am not even privy to those things. And I like to at least imagine that we have become very close friends since we met.
And the closer we get, the less likely you are to ever see them. Anyway, I highly advise nobody go looking for them because it's going to be a waste of your time. But, so when I got back into that very briefly, I decided that it's time. And then, because that was at the same period where what I was talking about earlier with all these things on FetLife and friends of mine from years ago getting into these incredibly abusive situations, I had to refocus my energy. I would love to continue it again one day. Like I said, I more than likely will, but for right now, I just don't have the energy to put into what it takes to be a professional Dom.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Next week on the Krypt, we're going to be talking about discretion in BDSM, why it is important, how you can maintain discretion, and what to do if someone hasn't been exactly discreet about your playtime. In the meantime, visit KuldrinsKrypt.com to find out how to get stickers, t-shirts, and hoodies, or how you can be like the accidental trucker and donate to help us keep the lights on. Plus, find all of our contact information. If you would like to contact us directly now, you can reach me at sir@KuldrinsKrypt.com or Funsize@KuldrinsKrypt.com. This has been Master Kuldrin and Funsize for KuldrinsKrypt.com. Unearth the truth.